something, then I'll turn off the recording. So just a little bit about joints. So our joints in the body are often different sort of shapes, and they have different functions depending on where they are in the body. So all the joints, the ones that we're looking at today, are movable joints, and all the movable joints have the same sort of layout, which we'll look at. But some joints are designed for mobility, and some are more designed for stability. So for example, the hip is a really good joint for stability, and we want it to be stable because we don't want loads of movement happening when we're walking. We want to be enough movement that we can walk around and move around, but not so much movement that maybe our femur, our thigh bone comes out of the socket. We definitely don't want that happening. So it's a really nice stable joint. Your femur goes into the head of the femur, goes into the acetabulum, the hip socket. So that's a really stable joint. Joints like the shoulders are more mobile, so we can obviously move our arms around, and that's so that we can, get our hands behind us, maybe to wash hair or to take off clothing. We want to have our shoulder joint is a joint for mobility, so that's another ball and socket joint, but it's a very shallow ball and socket joint, so we have all this movement. The knee joint is a hinge joint, so that's really not designed to do lots of big kind of movements. It's really designed because it's for walking. So it's a knee joint, it's a hinge joint, and it allows us to push off to better propel ourselves forward. So that's designed in that it's sort of working through mostly one plane. It does have a slight bit of movement, a slight bit of twisting ability, but not masses, unlike the pelvis, like the hip, that does have a lot of outward movement and inward movement, circular movements, as well as but the knee just has this sort of hinge movement. All the joints have the same features though. So I'm sorry, I did actually have a PowerPoint, but it's not been working today when I try to get it up, so I can't, but you'll just have to visualize it. So where your two bones are meeting, every single movable joint in the body has exactly these same features. Two bones meet. The surface of the bone is covered in what we call cartilage. So you've probably heard of cartilage, and this is called hyaline cartilage. So there are never bones touching anywhere in your body unless we've worn away at some of these features. The bones can sometimes end up touching, which can end up being painful. But the bones don't actually touch. There's space between the bones, and each surface of the bone is covered in cartilage. And this cartilage is like the smoothest sort of ice skating rink, almost like maybe like sort of Tupperware. So it's got this coating. Now the cartilage gets nourishment from the bone, and it gets nourishment from fluid within the joint, which we'll come to. The next sort of layer in that joint would be something maybe that is either holding that joint in place. It's another type of cartilage. Or it could be something in between the two bones that maybe is cushioning. So in your knee, it's called a meniscus. It's just the cushioning in between the knees. It's another type of cartilage. And with the hip and the shoulder, it's a labrum. So it's almost like a little bit of putty or Play-Doh. You remember when you were a child, you had putty that you could make into things. It sort of makes a little lip that the joint sits in. So that's another layer of cartilage that sometimes we can affect without meaning to, or we can wear and tear. But this cartilage is either designed to sort of reduce friction, reduce wear and tear, reduce sort of any, so it's allowing the joint to glide, basically, move really smoothly. And then if you can imagine your joint where these two bones meet with their cartilage and there's something in between or holding it in place, around all of that is like a tubey grip, when you have an injury and you put like a little sock around that joint, and these are every single joint we have in the body. Little sock goes around that joint, and that secretes synovial fluid, and that fluid helps the joint flow really nice and fluidly. And that's actually what we're going to look at today, because it's the fluid in the joint. We want to try and move our joints around in a way that lubricates them as much as possible in that synovial fluid. So often we do in yoga, we do these kind of, it's called circumduction. It's circular movements. So we're trying to, make circles, because that's probably going to coat the cartilage as much as possible in that synovial fluid to make the joints less stiff, to reduce some of that wear and tear. The other thing about wear and tear, which we looked a little bit when we were looking at bone strength, so those of you that were with me last week, bone strength, is it's very important to engage your muscles, because With these joints, what we also have, so we've got the cartilage in between that gives it a bit of cushioning or holds it in place. You've got the synovial fluid that it's in, that it moves around. And then we have ligaments, they hold bone to bone. The next thing is muscles attached to bones via tendons. Now, if we sort of collapse in joints, so last week we were talking about the hip, when we're balancing, we were talking about not sitting in our joint. So if I sort of sit in my joint, or I completely lock my legs, I'm sort of sitting in the joint, I'm not giving it much space. So the joint is sort of, I'm pushing in on the joint. Whereas if I actually use my muscles, I don't know if you can see this, I'm sort of slightly lifting out of the joint. I'm exaggerating with my hands, but you're using muscles to help engage. So you're not sitting in joints. And this is really important for us, especially if you do yoga, or you're standing for long periods of time, not sort of just hanging out in the joints. And we'll have a place. So if you're thinking, I don't know what she means by hanging out in the joints, it'll make more sense when we come into it. But it's that idea of not sort of just collapsing, standing in one joint, especially if you're balancing, because I've got more weight going down through one leg. And if I'm just sitting in the joint, which can feel a lot easier, it's much more challenging to kind of lift a little bit out of the joint, engage my muscles to sort of lift me up. That's actually harder, but it means the muscles are working and I'm not just collapsing and sitting in the joint. And it's important with things like the knee. We're going to have a play with our chair, but not locking the knee out. We want to sort of try and engage the quadricep muscles. That's going to lift us out of our knee joints. And so we want to use the muscles to help us get a little bit more space in our joints. We want movement to help move the bones around in that fluid, because again, the cartilage only gets nourished, doesn't have a blood supply, so it's only getting nourishment from your bone or from the fluid in your joint. So movements that are really sort of circling and freeing up can be really helpful. And we know that, you know, sort of treatment for cancer. So when women go into menopause, we know that we need estrogen. Estrogen helps to keep our joints mobile, and estrogen helps with that sort of lubrication of the joints. And when we lose some of that estrogen, the joints that were being kept sort of healthy and lubricated, they don't have the estrogen. So one of the side effects, as we know from any medication that either reduces estrogen or blocks the estrogen, we then can start getting the symptoms can be joint pain. So sometimes that's why you're experiencing joint pain, because estrogen also stimulates collagen and the production of collagen, and that helps make the joints a little bit more stable as well. So with the reduction of estrogen, that can often be why we experience joint pain. So we really do then need to give the body a little bit of helping hand, try to lubricate it, try to strengthen it. So we want to strengthen muscles around joints so that those muscles just give you a little bit of lift out of the joints, especially I think sort of around knees and ankles and hips, because we put a lot of weight in those joints. The shoulder, again, because it's a joint for mobility, if you are spending time on your hands or you're doing yoga and things like that, again, even when you're putting weight bearing on your hands, then you also don't want to be sitting in that joint. So we do want to make sure we're not collapsing, but we'll have a play with that. So hopefully it will start to make more sense as we go through. So even if you're thinking, I'm not quite sure what that means, sitting in my joints, I don't know if I do that or not. So we'll have a play with it, and hopefully by the end you'll have a bit more of an idea of what exactly that means. So I thought we'd start today. We'll start with the smaller sort of joints. So we're going to start with hands and feet. So some of this is we did last week with the feet. We're just going to start with our hands. So the first thing you do is bring your hands together in a prayer position. I'm just going to come a little bit closer so you can see. So hands are going to be in a prayer position like this. And I want you to just open and close your fingers. So you're just opening and closing your fingers. You're in this little prayer position. Just opening and closing, opening, closing. So just starting to get the hands to do some movement here. So this is called abduction and adduction. You're bringing the fingers together and then you're opening them. And you might already think, oh, yeah, I can feel muscles working in my hands. And then I just want you to interlace your fingers and then just squeeze your fingers together and then try to spread your fingers wide. And then squeeze your fingers. So you make a little fist and then try to spread the fingers wide. So it's like you're squeezing in and then you're spreading the fingers wide. Hopefully you can still see that. Just give it another angle. So squeeze. And then just spread the fingers, just a couple more like that. Squeeze, spread, squeeze, spread. Okay. And then bring your hands back into prayer position. And now turn your prayer down and now do the same thing of opening and closing. Sorry, I can't. And you're going to try to relax the shoulders. So the shoulders might come up, but you're just opening and closing the hands, but the prayer is pointing down. just slightly different. And then again, can you interlace the fingers? But see if this time you can interlace it with the opposite index finger on top. If you're not sure, go your other way, and then it probably feels a bit wonky. That's how you'll know it's not right. And then turn your hands down, and again, squeeze, and then spread your fingers, squeeze, spread your fingers. Try to relax your shoulders. Oh, sorry, my shoulders are up because I'm trying to show you, but the fingers are sort of pointing down now, so it's just slightly different angle. And again, you're squeezing and opening, squeezing and opening. One last time, squeeze and open. And then come back to your hands in that prayer position, and you're just going to keep your prayer, but you're going to pull the prayer down the body. See if you can keep the heel of the hand touching. So how far can you pull your prayer down without the heel of the hand separating? Just take a breath in, take a breath out. And now can you pull the prayer down so that your heel of the hands separate away from each other, but your fingers are still touching. So fingers are still touching, but now the heel of the hand comes away from each other. You might just get a little bit of a stretch into the wrists, just sort of feeling the wrists. And then just release. Now turn your fingers to point down, and same thing. Can you just sort of pull up now on the wrist, keeping the heel of the hands touching? And then pull up, and now just separate the heel of the hand. So the fingers stay touching, but the heel of the hands aren't touching anymore. Perfect. And then you're just going to release. And then can you just bring the backs of the hands to touch? And we're just going to make a little circular movement. So you're going to drop your fingers down towards the floor. See how long you can keep the backs of your hands touching. And then there's a point where you have to release them and then bring the backs of the hands together. So you're trying to keep the backs of the hands. So you're constantly keeping your hands in contact with each other. They go backs of the hands, and then they roll round, and then they go backs of the hands again. So you just sort of trying as much as you can to keep the backs of the hands, and then there's a point at the front where you rotate round. So you're just getting a little bit of circular movement around the wrists. So you're just making some little circles. So just one more like that. Okay, and now a little bit more challenging. Take the arms out in front of you and cross one arm on top of the other, but at the wrists. And then can you turn your thumbs to point down? Thumbs point down, interlace your fingers, and then see if you can draw your knuckles back towards you, and maybe take your arms through that gap and then back out in front of you. This is a really big stretch, so it might be that you're really tight. Some of you might find you can extend your arms a little further. Soften your shoulders, don't push into pain. We definitely don't want to push into pain, so it might be that you ease back a bit. Take a breath in, take a breath out. And then you're going to release. So come back the way you came. So you bring the knuckles in and then back out in front of you. And then just release your fingers and change which arm is on top. So it's just switching arms. Again, interlace your fingers. I'll show it this way. And then you draw your knuckles in towards you and then out through the chest. And again, one side might feel a little easier than the other side. So you might be like, oh, I can really straighten my arms on one side and I can't do it on the other. Keep the shoulders soft. Check in with your breath. So just breathing in fully and breathing out fully. Lovely, everyone. And then you're just going to release, come back to center, and then release your hands and just flick as if you're flicking water off your fingers. So just flick, like you're flicking waters off your fingers. Lovely. And then just make little propeller movements with your hands. So it's like you're circling your wrist like little propellers. Lovely, everyone. Change the direction. Turn your propellers the other way. And then one last thing. Imagine you're conducting a very small orchestra. So just a really small orchestra. And then, sorry, last thing now, just imagine you're painting a fence, but your hands are like the paintbrushes. So you're just sort of painting down and up, painting down and up. And then just let your hands rest on your lap for a moment. I just want you to close your eyes and just notice. So notice any warmth, notice any movement in the hands, in the wrists. You might sort of get sort of tingling sensation. Again, just sort of lubricating, encouraging the movement to sort of stimulate these joints. You know, they say, there's a saying that motion is lotion, and lotion is motion. So the more we can move the joints, the more we create this sort of lotion, this lubrication. So just noticing your hands, any tingling sensations or any sense of maybe the hands being a little bit more alive than when you started. Perfect. And now we're going to do a similar sort of thing with the feet. So for those of you with me last week, slightly different to last week, but same sort of idea. The most challenging thing you might do all class is what we're about to do next, which is you're going to take, so you have to take your socks off, take hold of one of your feet and slide your fingers in between your toes, probably the opposite hand to the foot. So that's where you're going to start. And then just like we did with the hands, can you spread your fingers wide so you open up your toes? And then can you try to squeeze your fingers with your toes? So you spread your fingers wide, you open up your toes, and then you squeeze and try to gently squash your fingers in a nice way. If you get any cramping, press just underneath your nose. It's supposed to be an acupressure point. You're sort of pressing towards your gum. Just do one more like that. Spread the toes wide with your hand. And then try to squeeze your fingers. So now you're closing the toes. And then just close your hand around your foot. And we're just going to draw some circles. So just circle your toes. So again, that idea, and you can almost imagine right now that you're sort of moving the toes around in that lovely fluid, that synovial fluid that's in the joint. So you're just circling the toes around. And then circle the other way. And then just move the toes forward and back. So I think this is what we did last week. We were holding on to, but we did individual toes, I think, last week. So just move the toes forward and back, forward and back, forward and back. So you're just sort of lubricating. Again, there's so many little bones in your feet. So sometimes that's why feet and hands get so stiff, is there's so many little bones and all those joints there. And then maybe just pick up the foot and just circle your foot now at the ankle. So you're moving the whole foot now. Change direction, just circle it the other way. So again, these circular movements, you can sort of visualize you're just stirring the bones around in the synovial fluid, in the fluid that's in the joint, in that joint capsule. And then just release out that right leg, and you can just sort of straighten out the legs, give your toes a little wiggle just to feel, is there any difference in the foot you've just opened and the one you haven't yet opened? And then we'll change sides. So you're going to bend the opposite knee. And again, I find it's easier opposite hand to opposite foot. And sometimes it's really tricky to get those fingers in there. So you sort of have to find a little way to wiggle. And don't worry if you're not actually getting all your fingers in between your toes, because obviously with the circular movement, even just sort of holding onto the toes will do that job. Spread your fingers wide, try to open up your toes. Just check your breathing. So take a breath in. Take a breath out, and then try to squeeze your fingers. And then spread the toes wide and open up the toes with your fingers. And then just gently try to squeeze the fingers. And then spread the toes wide. And then try to squeeze your fingers. And then again, just close your hand around your toes. So again, don't worry if you haven't managed to get the fingers in between all the toes. Just see if you can draw sort of circles. So you're circling the toes. We're not moving the whole of the foot. We're just trying to lubricate those joints where the toes, your phalanges, meet the metatarsals, the longer bones in the foot. And then change the direction, just circle the other way. See if you're still breathing. So just breathing in fully and breathing out fully. And then just rock the toes just forward and back, forward and back. So that's flexion and extension. And if you notice with trainers, often trainers slightly turn up at the end. So our toes end up a lot of the time in extension. So it's just quite nice to move the toes. And then just release out the foot again. Give the feet a little wiggle. And just hopefully now they feel a little bit balanced. And then I just want to move back up the body, and I'm going to look at sort of neck and jaw. So with your jaw, can you just take your jaw forward and back, like are you just drawing it forward and draw it back? So just your jaw moves forward and back. So try not to move the whole head. We're going to do that in a moment. And then can you imagine, remember a record player or CD player, if you remember those? Can you circle the bottom jaw like a record player or a CD player? And then go the other way. I find one way so hard. And then relax the jaw. Now, can you just take your face forward and then your face back? So face forward might feel very comfortable because you might spend a bit of time like this on a computer. Take your face back. So face forward and face back, face forward, face back, face forward, and face back, face forward, and then take the face back so it feels like crown of the head is over your sort of pelvis, so you don't feel like you're in the forward head position. And then we're just going to make some neck circles. So the thing with the neck is you have these really small vertebrae in the neck. So what we want to avoid with the neck is, and especially if there's any risk of osteoporosis, osteopenia, or metastases to bones, is not dropping the head forward or kind of dropping the head back, because they're little tiny vertebrae and we just don't want to just drop, you know, so we want to really control. So we're going to make neck circles, but we're not going to be just dropping either forward or back. So you're just going to take left ear towards left shoulder, and then just draw your chin towards your chest. So you're really controlling the movement, and then bring right ear towards right shoulder, and then just lift your chin. So you might start to bring your gaze up and then continue. So you're taking left ear towards left shoulder, chin towards your chest, right ear to right shoulder, lift your chin. If you feel like you need more support, you can even take your hands to the back of the head when you lift the chin, if that feels better. So just again, very nice controlled movements, but trying to circle, but without a feeling of kind of dropping forward or dropping back. And sometimes when I go really quiet, I don't know about you, but can you hear sounds? I can hear all the little joints, the little sounds in the joints. So little crunching sounds are totally normal. It's called crepitation, and it's completely normal, little sounds going on in the joints. And then we're just going to go the other way. So next time right ear goes towards right shoulder, you're going to drop chin towards your chest, left ear to left shoulder, lift your chin. One way of circling might be easier than the other, but again, you're just not dropping the head forward or back as you circle. And sometimes when you're tight, you might not even be able to have that sort of range of motion. One side might feel tighter than the other. So you're just noticing that. So again, just these nice circular movements. Lovely. And just one more time, again, noticing any sounds going on in your neck. Notice them without judging. Come back to your breathing, and then just bring the head back to center. And then either tap your fingers to your shoulders, or if it's okay, interlace your fingers at the back of your neck. If that doesn't work for anyone, hands to shoulders is perfectly fine. And then use the sort of heel of your hand to kind of lift your head out of your neck. So you feel like your neck is really nice and long. And then press your elbows wide and just lift your chin. What I want us to avoid here is sort of using your lower back to lift. So we're not pushing from the lower back, but you're just lifting the chest towards your chin as if you could inflate it. And then as you exhale, squeeze your elbows towards each other and tuck your chin towards your chest. So as you breathe in, you're taking the elbows out wide and you're lifting the chest, maybe looking up. And then as you exhale, squeeze elbows towards each other, tuck your chin in towards your chest. Inhale, elbows go out wide as you lift the chest towards your chin. And then as you exhale, squeeze elbows towards each other, tuck your chin in towards your chest. Lovely. Just two more like that. So inhale, elbows wide, lift the chest. Exhale, tuck chin towards the chest. Again, just not dropping the head. One last time. Inhale as you open the chest, looking up. And then exhale as you close and hug the elbows in towards each other. And then inhale, open up the arms and just stretch the arms out wide. And just for a moment, just tap your shoulders. So when we were looking at the lymphatic system a couple of weeks ago, these are really nice pumping movements for the lymphatic system as well, because you're sort of getting contracting muscles in your biceps and your arms and releasing muscles, and they act like a little pump. And now we're just kind of lubricating the elbow. So just getting the elbow moving. And often it's quite good to change angles. So sometimes we can do this with the elbow and tuck the elbows in for a moment and do it here. And it's just a slightly different movement from where we just had the arms. You could also do the same movement with your arms stretching up to the sky. Next time you tap your shoulders, let's just draw some circles with the elbows. So just circling the elbows. Lovely. And then change direction, circle the elbows the other way. And again, this movement, if you do it lying down, you're a bit restricted by the floor, but it obviously changes the angle slightly. Gravity is working in a different way. So it does feel very different when we do it seated and when we do it lying down. Lovely, everyone. And just one more circle. and then release the arms down. And we're just going to come down onto our mats or down onto the floor. Hopefully you can still see me. And we're just going to come down to the floor. Have your knees bent to begin with, and just have your feet flat on the floor. So knees bent, feet are flat on the floor. And then just have your arms down by your side. Turn your palms to face up. So again, we're never pushing into anything that feels like pain. We're not straining the body, but can you just reach your right fingertips down towards your right foot? So you just feel your right shoulder gently come away from your ear, and then slide the hand back. And now just slide your left hand a little bit down towards your left foot. So it feels like your left shoulder slightly comes away from your ear, and then slide the arm back. And just go a couple more times, just side to side. Right fingertips slide down, then they slide back up. Left fingertips slide down, then they slide back up. Right fingertips slide down, then they slide back up. Left fingertips slide down, and then they slide back up. One more on each side. So right shoulder comes a little bit away from your ear, and then your left shoulder blade comes away from your ear. Perfect. And then just take your arms up to the ceiling. And you're going to keep your arms straight here, but can you reach your fingertips up to the ceiling so you feel your shoulder blades come away from the floor? And then keep your arms straight, but press your shoulder blades back down to the mat. And actually, they almost feel like two little feet. You can feel like your chest slightly lifts when you push your shoulder blades to the floor. And then just repeat that. So reach your arms up, shoulder blades kind of lift away from the floor, your chest slightly domes. And then as you exhale, push the shoulder blades down into the mat. You might even feel a little lift of your chest or your thoracic bit of your spine. That's where your rib cage is. Arms reach up to the sky, and then press the arms back down. So you're not bending the elbows, you're just reaching the arms up. And then you're just drawing the arms back down. So you're pushing them back into their sockets. One last time, reach the arms up, and then draw the arms back down. And then find somewhere in the middle. So it feels like both shoulder blades are on the mat. And then just cross one arm over the other, like you make an X shape with your arms. Reach around and see if you can give your shoulder blades, catch hold of your shoulder blades with your hands. If that's too tight for anyone's armpits or any pain, just slide the hands more to the sides of the arms or the shoulders. And just sort of see if you can press your elbows up towards the ceiling and feel like you're trying to breathe into the space in between the shoulder blades. And then stretch your arms back up to the sky, change the cross. So whichever arm was on top, now change it, it's underneath. Make a cross shape with your arms, an X shape with your arms, and then reach around and find your shoulder blades. And again, sort of press your elbows up towards the ceiling, breathe into the space in between the shoulder blades. And just breathing in fully and breathing out fully here. And then release your arms, hug your right knee in towards you, and let's just give the right foot a little circle. So again, remember these circular movements, you can picture it, the bones, those articulating surface, the cartilage of the bone just moving around in the synovial fluid. Change the direction, go the other way. And then just kick your leg to the ceiling and rebend your knee. So again, now just sort of warming up the joint of the knee, just kicking and bending. You don't need to straighten the leg fully, so don't worry if the leg doesn't fully straighten, but just sort of warming up. And again, we're warming up around that joint. So remember, the muscles help stabilize the joints. And then next time you rebend your right knee, can you just start to circle your knee now? So you're drawing a circle with your knee. See if you can keep everything else still. So you're not rocking the whole of the body, but you're just trying to imagine here that you're stirring your thigh bone around in your hip socket. And so just circling with that right knee. So you'd be drawing a circle with your right knee. But you're trying to keep everything else still. So you're not tipping over to the right when your knee goes out to the right. And remember, when we looked at the lymphatic system, again, all of these poses that open and close the groin are really helpful for our lymphatic system. Change the direction of your circle, just go the other way. Again, that kind of opening and closing of the groin. Visualize you're kind of stirring your hip socket with your thigh bone. And then just bring your right foot back down to the floor for a moment and just notice your 2 hip creases. So is there more space on that right side? Are you aware of any maybe movement? If you sort of brought your awareness to your skin on the right groin and right leg, are you aware of any movement or pulses underneath the skin? So again, just being aware of any differences on that right side compared to the left side. And then draw your left knee in towards you. We'll do the same on the left side. So just circling the foot in one direction. And then just change the direction and circle the other way. And then you can take your arms down by your side as you breathe in, kick your leg to the ceiling, and then as you exhale, rebend the knee. So inhaling, you're kicking the leg to the ceiling. Exhale as you rebend the knee. So again, just sort of warming up the joint of the knee. So you can see the knee is that hinge joint. It just kind of moves forward and back. Again, it does have a tiny little bit of movement, a little bit of twisting ability. And then next time you bend your knee, can you just start to stir your thigh bone around in the hip socket? So again, just lubricating that joint there. And we're keeping the right foot pressing down into the mat, trying to keep the right bottom on the mat, the right side of your hip on the mat. So you're not rocking the body side to side. That might also give you a little bit of tummy muscles working to stabilize you here. So again, never a bad thing to have the core sort of slightly engaging. So you might feel those tummy muscles working a bit just to stop you moving. And then change the direction, just stir your thigh bone in the opposite direction. Just, you can really picture that joint now, all that synovial fluid in the joint, lubricating the joint. Lovely. And then just bring the foot back down to the mat. And again, take a breath in, take a breath out, just noticing sensations around that kind of left leg, left hip area. So just where your thigh meets your pelvis. So the sort of groin area. And then take a breath in. And as you exhale, you're just going to roll to the side that's most comfortable for you to roll on. Push down with your top hand, and then we're just going to come up to all fours. So if you need any padding underneath your knees for all fours, please put padding cushions or a blanket or something underneath your knees. We're not actually going to be on our knees too long, but it's always just nice to look after those kneecaps. So then as you come onto all fours, just look down at your hands for a moment. So we did a little bit of work warming up the hands, but as you look down at your hands, see if you can turn your hands so your fingers point out towards the sides of your mat. Maybe just rock a little side to side, just exploring what this feels like. And then maybe see if your fingers can turn back towards your knees. They may not work for all of us to do that. So you might find that doesn't work for me. They go more side to side. And then we're just going to go forward, forward, and either side, side, or back, back. So you're either turning to the sides, or they might be going back, and then forward, forward again, and then back, back again. So just, again, just sort of working a little bit through the wrists. And sort of strengthening. So the stronger the muscles are around joints, again, the more stability we're going to have in those joints. The less we sort of end up sitting in the joints. And then next time your fingers point forward, forward, just stay there. Now, when we talk about sitting in the joints, if you just let your chest sink to the floor, let your whole body collapse down so it feels like you've almost created a bit of a hammock in your back. This is the sort of sitting in the joint. And now just feel the difference. If you push the floor away from you, lift away from the floor, you're now no longer sitting in that joint. You're using muscles to lift out of the joint. So again, if you're not sure, sag everything to the floor so you drop down. Can you feel your shoulders? They're kind of, you're just sort of sitting in the joint, which feels quite stable. But now push down with your hands and lift out of the joint. So now I'm engaging muscles, and the muscles you're working are helping you lift out of the joint. So less wear and tear in those joints. And then just bring your forearms down to the floor for a moment. You can bring your hands to touch, or palms can be down on the mat. And then as you breathe in, just draw your chest forward. So you do make a little dip in your lower back. And then as you exhale, push down with your forearms and round your spine. You might be looking down now at the floor. And then as you breathe in, draw your chest through your arms, pull your elbows towards your knees to get some length in the front of your body. Push down with your forearms and round your spine. So we call this pose as cat and cow. So as you breathe in, you come forward. And then as you exhale, you push down with your forearms. You look a little bit like a Halloween cat. Inhale as you draw the chest forward, gazing forward. And then exhale, just a little round for the spine. So again, just starting to lubricate those joints. And one last time, inhale as you come forward. And then exhale as you round the spine. And then come back to neutral and come back up onto your hands. And just see if you can just start to circle just your pelvis. So can you circle just your pelvis without moving anything else? I think that's quite hard work. But you're just trying to make a small circle with your pelvis. And now start to make it a little bigger. So you feel you start to incorporate your lower back. And then as your circles get a little bit bigger, you feel like you're incorporating your rib cage. If you feel like you need to get off your hands, like this is challenging for your wrists, you can start to make your circles bigger and push away with your hands so your bottom comes towards your heels as you circle. So again, just sort of exploring here. Don't worry about what it looks like. Close your eyes. Just feel, again, can you feel like you're moving all the little joints all the little vertebrae in your spine? Maybe moving around your rib cage, maybe even moving around the hips and the shoulders. So just getting a little circular movement. And I just want you to change direction. So just go the other way with your circles. So again, if you need to get off your wrist, push your bottom towards your heels so you get a little break from your wrist. You can always come up onto fists or come back down onto your forearms if anyone's finding this is just too challenging to be on the hands for this long. And just a couple more like that. So just circling in one direction. Again, sort of thinking of all these little joints getting moved in their synovial fluid. So just lubricating these joints. Lovely, everyone. And then come back to center, walk your hands in towards your knees and come up to high kneeling. So this might be a point where you fold your blanket one more to give it a little bit of padding. You're just going to step your right foot forward. So we're just going to explore with the hips what it feels like if you kind of collapse into your joint. So if you just let everything shift forward, hands onto your front thigh, just sort of collapse. It's quite a nice stretch to your front hip. But again, we're not really using muscles. We're just kind of what I call sagging. We're kind of got into the pose. We're just collapsing. So now can you hug your front foot and your knee towards each other and try to lift up and grow a little taller. And now what you might feel is like, oh yeah, there's a whole lot of muscles working. So now we've got muscles working all the way around a joint. So we do want all the muscles working all the way around. So there's less wear and tear at the joint when the muscles are working. And then with your right hand on your right thigh, left arm down by your side, let's just have a little bit of movement here. As you breathe in, shift forward without that sagging feeling. And as you exhale, shift back, lower the left arm back down. So inhale, let your left arm come forward as you shift forward. And then exhale as you lower back down. So you should still be getting quite a nice stretch, but it's without the kind of plopping and sagging to the floor. And then exhale as you lower back down. We'll just do two more on this side. So inhale. And then as you exhale and you lower the arm back down. Lovely. Inhale as you shift forward. And then exhale as you lower back down. Push with your right foot so you come back to high kneeling, and we're just going to change sides. So you're just going to step your left foot forward. So again, with both hands on your thigh, just experience what it feels like if you just kind of sink, you just collapse. Not really, you might feel muscles getting a stretch, but they're not actually working and you're sitting in your joints. So this is what I mean about kind of sitting in the joint. So now try to hug your front foot and your knee towards each other. Feel like you want to grow taller. And as you hug everything in, you'll move back a little bit. So you're definitely not collapsing. Then your left hand's going to stay on your left thigh, right arm down by your side. As you breathe in, shift the pelvis forward as you float your right arm up. And then as you exhale, you're lowering back down. So we are moving and we're getting stretches, but we're not collapsing. So again, we're trying to sort of keep a little bit of stability, and we're trying not to also over move from our lower back. So just notice if your ribs are poking out, keep your front ribs softening down. Two more like that, breathing in as you shift forward. And then as you exhale, lowering back down. And then last time, inhale as you shift forward. And then exhale as you lower back down. Now to come up to stand, tuck your back toes under, hands to your front thigh. Can you push off your back foot and step forward into an imaginary chair? And you can either have forearms onto your thighs or hands onto your thighs. And then can you use your leg strength now to bring you all the way up to stand? So it's leg strength rather than lower back, bringing you up to stand. I'm going to slightly adjust my camera angle so you can see. And then we're just going to use our chair here. So just looking at the knee joint now. So we sort of looked about not collapsing in the hip, and we're going to look a little bit about not collapsing in the hip standing when we're balancing. We'll try that. But also for the knee, what we're trying to do is we want to engage the legs. So actually, for a moment, just sit on your chair. Sit up nice and tall, so just check that you're not rounding your spine. So again, we're always trying to find this long sort of posture. And then can you breathe in, just extend one leg out in front of you. Stay with the same leg, bend the knee, and then just extend the leg. So what you might feel working, if you put your hand on that thigh, you'll feel this muscle here. This muscle at the front of your thigh is called your quadricep. There's 4 muscles. And it's engaging to help you extend your leg. So you can feel the muscles engage to straighten the leg. And so this muscle is a really important muscle, especially if knee joint is where you're experiencing your pain. We want to really be engaging this muscle. We'll just change sides just to feel the muscle on the other side. So extending the leg, rebending the knee. And when we come back down onto our mats after this, I'll show you an exercise that's quite good for strengthening the quadriceps as well from a seated position. So this is a really nice one to strengthen the quadriceps. So you probably feel your quadricep working. And you're just extending the leg, and again, you'll just feel this muscle working. And just check that when you tie, you don't start to round. So you do want to be right on your sitting bones, so maybe not leaning all the way back into your chair. And then so let's bring the foot back down. Let's see what that's like when we're maybe doing some poses. So you're going to step forward towards your chair. So we've got the chair here. You're just going to step your left foot back. Right foot's going to be forward. Put a bend in your right knee, and then just tip forward at the tops of the thighs and find your chair. So you've got your right foot forward. If for anyone this is a strain on your back knee, having the back foot down, you can be on the ball of your back foot and have the heel lifted. So that's always a good option here. Now I just want you to look down, and now you might not be able to see the whole of your right foot because the chair might be in the way, but can you ground down through the inner and outer edge of your right foot? So we're not rolling to one side. And then can you start to pull your right sitting bone back? So you start to straighten your right leg. And just have a look at your knee. Just check your knee still stays tracking forward. It's not rolling to one side. So you can bend it and maybe make it so that it's tracking forward. And then rebend the knee. So it's going to move in and out of this pose a few times. You're starting to straighten the leg. But can you straighten the leg without locking out the knee? So you're guiding your right sitting bone back, trying to engage that quadricep here, but trying not to lock the knee. And you can explore here what it does feel like if you just push the knee back and you lock the knee. There's not really anything at the back of your knee. So we're always trying to keep a little micro bend in the knee. That keeps our muscles from working. Keeps our muscles working, sorry, not from working. Keeps our muscles working. So just rebending and straightening the leg and just exploring what it feels like if you lock the knee out. And what it feels like, can you have a little micro bend, but still be engaging the muscles at the front of the leg? And just rebend your knee and re-straighten your leg. So you might be really starting to be aware of your hamstring here because hamstrings get quite tight. And then bend your knee, step up to the chair with your left foot, and then just change sides. So step your right foot back. So again, often we want to make sure that the foot is stable because that's your foundation. So just check, can you ground down through the inner and outer edge of your foot as you start to straighten your left leg by drawing your left sitting bone back, but not just by pushing the knee back. Rebend that left knee, push down into the ball of the foot and start to draw your left sitting bone back. So can you keep the inner part of your foot grounded as you just straighten and rebend the leg? And again, just exploring what it feels like when you kind of lock the leg. And sometimes that can be a bit challenging for the joints. So we're keeping a little micro bend. So your leg looks straight. If I was to look at you, I'd think your leg was straight, but you know it's not completely straight. It's that sort of that feeling. And just a couple more like that. So just bending and re-straightening the leg. So we're trying to get this kneecap to lift, quadricep to engage. And again, just notice if the knee does track forward and back, so it's not going out to one side. And maybe it does, one leg does and one doesn't. And awareness is half the step to change. So once you're aware of that. And then you're just going to step forward next time you bend your knee up to the chair. Again, use your legs to come all the way up to stand. And then as you come up to stand, just notice here again, can you put a little soft bend in your knees? Feel like you want to lift your kneecaps up. So again, it's engaging these quadriceps. And then see if you can push down with your feet and straighten your legs, but without pushing your knees back. So you're not locking out the legs. And it's pushing down with the balls of the feet and try to lift the kneecaps up so the quadriceps stay engaged. So there's a little micro bend in your knees. And then notice if you put weight into your right foot, can you pick up your left foot? And can you do that without sitting in your right hip? So again, hug that right hip in and then bring the left foot back down. Now again, find your feet, check you haven't locked your legs. Can you now pick up your right foot and just check when you pick up your right foot, did it make you sit into that left hip? So you hug that left outer hip in and then bring the foot back down. And we're just going to go a couple of times, sort of side to side. Again, without sitting in the joint. Come back up, bring the foot back down and then change sides. So you're going to go the other way. But again, we're just trying to avoid that collapsing and the locking of the leg. Oh, so many things to think about when you balance. One more to each side. So shift the weight. Maybe now experiment lifting your leg a little higher. You've got walls and chairs you can always hold on to. And then bring the foot back down. And then change sides. So again, try not to lock the leg. Try not to collapse into your hip. Hold on to chairs if you need that bit of support. And then bring the foot back down. And then just take your hands to your hips for a moment. Just make some little hip circles. So just circle your hips in one direction. And then change the direction and just go the other way with your hip circles. So again, just getting a little bit of movement. And you'll notice your feet. If you look down at your feet, you're kind of shifting from one side of the foot to the other side of the foot. These are quite nice actually to sort of mobilize the body. Perfect. And then turn back to your chest. So again, I think we worked with this when we were doing the bone strengthening. We were talking about how important it is to balance. And again, without this sort of side to side movement of sitting in your hips. And now we're adding on this not locking out our knees. So there's keeping these muscles working to lift us out of the joints. Face your chair and then just put a big bend in your knees like you're sitting into another chair. You're facing your chair and it's like you're sitting back into your chair. And then fold at the tops of the thighs so your spine stays long. Remember, we're always trying to keep our spine in neutral. Hands are going to come down to your chair. Now keep the bend in your legs to begin with. Can you just slide your right leg back and can you pick up your right leg without you sitting in your left hip? So you're hugging that left outer hip in. And then keeping the knees bent, bring the right foot back down to the floor. Keep both knees bent as you drag that left leg back, pick up the left leg. Notice, have you swung your hips out to the right? Can you keep them hugging in? And then bring that foot back down to the mat. And again, as you exhale, drag your right leg back, pick up your right leg. Try not to lock your left leg, keep that little bend. And then bring that right knee or right foot back down. As you exhale, drag your left leg back. And again, just check you're not sitting in your right hip. So hug it in. And then you're going to bring it back down. And then last time, so drag the right leg back. Pause for a moment. So I just want you to check. Firstly, are you sitting in your left hip? So hug the left outer hip in. And now see if you can start to work on straightening this left leg, but not to the point where you lock it. So again, we're not locking the leg. We're trying to get all these muscles working to lift us out of the joint. Bring your right foot back down to the mat. Last time, drag the left leg back and then pick up the left foot. And again, you can start to straighten the right leg now, but don't straighten it by just pushing your knee back and locking it. So you're trying to lift the kneecap up, trying to engage the quadricep, and it's really hard. You're not sitting in your right outer hip. Hug it in and then bring the foot back down to the mat. Bend both knees so you sit back into an imaginary chair. And again, use the strength of your legs to bring you all the way back up. Now, if it feels like a lot, like you feel like, oh my gosh, there's so many things. How could I possibly do this in my normal day? We're just going to do something now, which I reckon just takes a few minutes. Really quick way of trying to get through a few joints. So just starting first with the neck, can you take your left ear to left shoulder? Circle your chin towards your chest, right ear to right shoulder. So just draw those little neck circles, do a couple in one direction. So again, you're not dropping the head back. Have you already started to lock your legs? Just notice that. And then just go the other way with your circle. So just change the direction. So you're just circling the other way. Lovely. And then start to bend your elbows, bring your fingertips to your shoulders, make some little elbow circles. Change the direction, go the other way. And then release your hands down, make some little propeller movements. So just circle your hands. And again, you could even change to see what it feels like if I change the angles. What happens if I take my arms up, especially if you want a little boost for your lymphatic system. Change the direction of your circles, go the other way. Maybe start to lower the arms back down. Bring your hands into prayer position and just press one hand to the other, and like you're pushing your prayer side to side. A little warm up for the wrist there. And then interlace your fingers, and can you make a figure of 8 sign, like an infinity sign? Just circle, make an infinity sign. Don't think about this one too much. Change the direction. That always foxes me. And then just take your hands to your hips, soften your knees, make some little hip circles that we did earlier. So you just make little hip circles here. Change the direction, make your hip circles the other way. And then just put a little bend to your knee, hands to your knees. Can you draw some knee circles? So just doing a little circling movement with your knees one way, and then circle and take your knees the other way. And then come back to center. So we're going to balance. So you're going to put weight into your right foot. So if you want to hold on to a chair, pick up your left foot. Can you just circle your knee? Oh, sorry, circle your foot. Apologies, circle your foot. I was thinking ahead of myself. Circle the foot the other way. And now even standing, you could do some little knee circles if you want. Again, moving that thigh bone around in the hip socket. Change direction, go the other way. And then bring the foot back down and just change sides. So again, holding on to something for a bit of support, pick up the opposite foot, circle the foot. So you're lubricating your ankle. Change the direction, go the other way. And then you can add on just a little circle for the knee. So you're moving the thigh bone around in the hip socket. We did these sort of lying on our back, a bit easier lying on our back, but can easily be done standing. Change the direction. And then bring the foot back down. So that's a quick way to skim through the body. One that you can do for your feet, it's a little bit meaner. And if you're losing toenails, obviously I wouldn't advise putting any pressure on your toenail beds, but you can start with soft bent knees. Now the blanket behind you could be really useful just to give you a bit more padding here. With soft bent knees, can you slide your right foot back and either be on your tiptoes, or can you go put your toenails onto the blanket or onto the floor? And then you can now just draw some little circles with your foot here. These are a little bit mean, so I apologize, but they are trying to get a bit of circular movement into, again, the toe area. But obviously you could do your ones in front of the sofa with your fingers in between your toes and circling them instead if you're like, these are really mean. And then come back to center. Again, soft bend to the knees. Slide now your left foot back. So again, either on the tips of your toes, or if you can bring your toenails to the floor, you bring your toenails to the floor, and then you just draw, again, some little circles here. So you're just circling the foot one way. I'm not sure we did change direction on the other side, but you can always change direction, go the other way. No, the other one. Okay, so nearly time for relaxation. One more thing seated, I just want to show you. I mentioned the pose that can help strengthen the quadriceps. So we did the one seated where we're extending the legs. That's quite nice. If you come down to sit for a moment, and again, you might have a blanket you sit on. Just take your legs out in front of you. Take your hands behind you. I'll slightly change this angle. So we want to try and keep the spine long. So again, always we're trying to work with a sort of a neutral spine. So we're trying not to, so we're trying to avoid the kind of rounded position that we spend a lot of our day in. So just sitting up nice and tall, and then you're just going to bend one knee in towards you, and you can then hold on to that knee and see if that also helps you stay up nice and tall. And can you draw your front ribs down? So again, tendency is for the ribs to poke out. We just want to keep the front ribs drawing down. You can take a breath in, and then as you exhale, can you pick up your straight leg and then lower it back down? And then can you pick up the straight leg without changing the shape of your spine, and then lower it back down? So you feel the muscles working in that leg to lift it, lower it back down. Again, what we want to avoid is kind of leaning back to try and lift the leg. We really just want to try and strengthen the muscles around the leg, because the stronger they are, the more they're going to work to lift you out of that joint. And just one more time, lifting up the leg and then lower it back down. Straighten out your bent knee and change sides. So again, can you kind of pull on the shins so you stay up nice and tall, flex the foot. And again, we do want to draw the front ribs down a little bit so they're not poking out, because that will also put you into a bit of a back bend. Slightly firm your belly, and as you exhale, pick up the leg. As you breathe in, lower back down. And then as you exhale, firm the belly to pick the leg up. Inhale as you lower back down. And so you might start with just 2 or 3 of these a day and see if you can add on to them. And one last time, pick up the leg. Can you feel those muscles working? And then lower everything back down. And then we're just going to straighten out both legs. We're going to come onto our back for our relaxation. So you could always roll up something to put underneath your knees, especially if you find lying flat pulls on your lower back, just bends the knees. Or if you don't have anything to put underneath your knees, you can just bend your knees and knock your knees in towards each other. And then when you come down to lie on your back, just lift up one shoulder, drop it back down, lift up the other shoulder, drop it back down. So you've got as much of your shoulder blade on the mat as you can. Turn your palms to face up, just make sure you're warm. So if you need socks or blankets, make sure you've got that. And then I just want you to drop your awareness all the way down to your toes. So can you picture your toes? Picture those joints. So remember all that lovely fluid in the joints. And imagine that your toes could just drift out away from your feet, like little boats floating out at sea. So the toes just drift out away from the feet. And sense maybe a sense of spaciousness in the feet. All those tiny little bones in the feet, just imagining space as the toes just drift out away from the feet. And then bring your awareness to your ankle bones. And just imagining all the fluidity, the lubrication down at the ankles, and then traveling up to the shins, picturing the knees and sensing that space between your thigh bones, your femurs, and your shin bones, the tibia and the fibula. So all that space at the knee. And then traveling up the legs, bring your awareness to your hip sockets, so the very front of the hips, the sort of groin area. And just sensing here some space. And sometimes you might visualize that space as like light. You might even picture the sort of fluid movements in that hip socket. And then imagine all the different vertebrae of the spine. There's space between all the vertebrae of the spine. And then bring your awareness to the shoulders, that shoulder socket, that really mobile, lots of movement there at that shoulder. Feel it's light and spacious. Bring your awareness to the crease of the elbows, sensing fluidity, space, light, and at the wrists. And all the fingers, imagining space at the fingers. And traveling back up the arms to the neck, all the little spaces in the small vertebrae of the neck. And then just unhinge the jaw and sense space at your jaw. So we often hold the jaw when we're stressed. So just noticing space there. And then just take a full breath in through the nose. Take a breath out through the mouth, make a sigh. And again, breathing in through the nose. Breathe out. Sigh. Sensing all the space and all the joints. Sense that fluidity. Now, if you've just got yourself super comfortable, please feel free to stay. If you're sticking with the time frame of this workshop, then you just might start to bring a little bit of movement back into your fingers and into your toes. Maybe even stretching out through the body. So again, as you stretch out, feeling that space as you spread your fingers wide, spread your toes wide, stretch your wrists away from your ankles so the whole body gets a nice big feeling of lengthening. And then when you're ready, bending your knees, you're just going to roll over to one side, taking your time. You might pause for a moment on that side. And then press down with your top hand. And just find your way into any comfortable seated position. Again, it could be sitting on your chair. And just with your eyes closed, just checking in, just noticing, what does it feel like to be you right now? So just sometimes you get a little sense of stillness or peace or spaciousness in the body, just noticing what that feels like to you today. And then bring your hands into prayer position, slightly bow your head. May our yoga grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And so with a quieter mind and an open heart, Namaste.